Welcome back, minors. My name is Amber Johnston. I'm a counselor here in Student Wellbeing.
And my name's Tracy Kriegel, and I'm also a counselor here at Student Wellbeing. And it's time for your morning cup of joe.
So, Tracy, it's a common theme in Western culture, this idea of opposites. You've got the villain and the hero, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, all the opposites. Can you think of any others?
Oh, gosh.
Coke and Pepsi.
Coke and Pepsi, salt and pepper.
I don't know that salt really.
French fries and tater tots.
Fair.
Do you like your French fries soggy or do you like them crisp?
Oh no, I want tater tots and I want them crisp. I want them almost burnt.
Mozzarella sticks or onion rings?
That's a mood one, really. To be fair, sometimes I'm really not in the, most of the time I guess it would probably be onion rings, but
Right.
sometimes I'm not in the mood for onion rings and I want mod sticks.
I know, right?
But I want onion rings, but I want that Southwest sauce.
Oh, yeah. Ketchup or mayonnaise?
Both. Well, it depends on what I'm putting it on. I'm not going to put ketchup and mayonnaise on my hot dog. But on a hamburger, I want both, but I don't want mustard. But on my hot dogs, I want mustard.
There you go. Okay.
So these are hard questions.
I know they are.
For you, ketchup or mayonnaise?
Both. But not on everything.
But what about ketchup or mustard?
Ketchup, hands down.
Okay.
Yeah, not a mustard girl. Unless it's in different, salads and stuff. So,
Really?
Yeah.
Not even on a hot dog?
mm-mm. No.
No?
No.
Oh, man.
No, just not mustard.
Okay, cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Dogs?
Mhm.
Cats.
Yeah, cats are self-sufficient, though. But we had cats when I was a kid, but no, not a cat person.
Really?
Cats attacked my birds this last summer, and they
Did
took two of my cat bird nests out.
Aww.
Barn swallows.
Oh, yeah, I remember you talking about
I love
that.
my barn swallows.
Oh,
They killed 3 baby birds.
sad.
It's very sad.
I like birds, too.
Barn swallows are the best because they eat mosquitoes.
Do they?
So we live on almost 5 acres, and they take care of all the mosquitoes. So, it's that chain of life with insects, and birds are the bomb for that.
Circle of
Yeah,
life.
exactly.
Okay.
All right, on with
Now
the show.
Okay, Lion King is not the theme of today's episode, just so you know.
What is that theme song to Star Trek? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Yeah. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. That's the theme of the show today.
Star Trek. Yes.
There you go. For all of you out there just singing along with Star Trek now.
Well, there's no really words to sing along.
No,
It's all the
it's
fair. What is that thing called? It's the thing. It's an electric machine, and then you move your hand through it, and that's what makes the sound.
Okay. Yeah. Fair. Harp.
Oh, no. No, it's like
We are not on
theremin.
task.
Theremin.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So, you're making me pick my brain this morning here. So let's talk about Star Trek.
And our favorite characters.
My favorite character in Star
Who's your
Trek?
favorite?
That's hard. Ironically, I always like Deanna Troy.
I like the captain. Of course,
You like the
Spock.
captain?
I like the captain. What was the guy that was the? He wasn't. He was the robot.
Data?
Data. I liked Data too. But
I like
Spock's
Data.
always, your fave. So.
I like Data, and I like Geordi.
Mhm.
And part of that's because I like LeVar Burton because of Reading Rainbow.
Mhm.
I grew up with Reading Rainbow.
There you go.
And
Who's
then,
the guy that looked like a? No, I'm thinking of. No, what is that show? Oh well, let's go on. People are out there
Okay.
going, "What? Shut up, just go on."
So let's talk about Spock.
Mhm.
Then we're going old school, like Star Trek here.
Okay.
Spock is half human, half Vulcan.
Mhm.
And he is, therefore, Vulcans are kind of known for being very logical and very non-emotional. Like they don't show their emotion.
It is what it is.
And humans are in this universe are known as being very emotional. Like, well, and comparatively to some other, races like Vulcans, they are.
I always see him as standing on the deck, and he's just very stoic, and everybody else running around like very chaotic, and he's just there.
Yeah.
No emotion, just calm, cool, collected. And the captain's like, da 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 da. And he's just like, will raise an eyebrow.
Yeah.
Okay. And off they go.
Well, in Next Generation, Data really fills that role, if you notice.
Yeah.
Like Data, like in old, I guess I don't know what to call it other than old Star Trek.
The older episodes.
Original
episodes.
classic.
Yeah.
In the original Star Trek, Spock had that stoic role in it, and then when you go on into the Next Generation, then you had Data really filled that.
Right.
So, in short, Spock in pop culture is kind of the characterization of the traditional ideas about our own brains, because he is that combination of the emotional human side and the non-emotional, and so we always talk about left and right brain, and that's been kind of debunked, but you still hear it a lot in pop culture where it's a left brain thing or a right brain thing or emotional versus logical. And Spock really becomes like the personification of that. Going back to this, we tend to equate emotions and being emotional with like childish or childlike behavior. So I want you to kind of think of a child or a toddler reacting very violently with a whole lot of emotion if they're given a blue cup instead of a green cup.
I don't want that blue cup. I want the green cup. Give me the blue cup.
And then after you give them the cup that they want, now they want the other one. Yeah.
Screaming match.
Throwing things. Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Temper tantrums.
We tend to see emotions as something violent, impulsive, and there's really a negative stereotype about emotions. Like, think about it. You're talking about people, you're being emotional, and we say that in a bad way. Right? Like when we say that, we don't mean, oh, that's a good thing. We mean it as an insult. And so thus, when somebody has problems with regulating emotions, we attribute negative feelings to them. So think about how much worse we perceive somebody who's overwhelmed with emotion versus someone who's emotionally stunted. So again, there's just this very negative impact, like idea in culture about people having too strong of emotions. And when somebody's emotionally stunted, there's almost a positive view about it.
Right, exactly. So, Amber, let's look at Spock's genetics a little bit more. I think that might be kind of interesting. So the Vulcan experience more intense emotions due to their very fast limbic system.
Right. We've talked about limbic systems before.
Yeah.
It's a control center of your brain, fight or flight kind of system.
Right. And so they usually suppress those emotions with logic, kind of like we talked about him being very stoic, being on the deck, being able to hide that emotional center. And so, lore states that before they learned to control their emotions, paranoia and homicidal rage were common. So that's interesting. They were more common for their rage, and so their paranoia was more out there.
Well, they were a very, very, very emotional race before they learned how to control their emotions. And so what that kind of tells us is that the Vulcans learned to control it to almost an overextent.
Yeah, so they dialed it back like 50 notches.
Right. Yeah. Like the middle ground, like let's say they were 50 notches in one direction and then you have 0 and then they went 50 notches in the opposite direction.
Right.
Like you just went negative 50 on the emotional meter.
Yeah. So this could add to the belief that strictly controlling emotions is good and feeling emotions is bad.
And if you kind of go back to our Star Trek or Star Wars episode, whoops, I'm going to lose my geek card here. My Star Wars episode that we did way back at the beginning of last year, we kind of talk about that perception a little bit in this idea of look at the dark side. The dark side had were the bad guys, and they were the ones who were out of control of their emotions, and the good guys were the guys that were able to control their emotions and were non-emotional. Like that's the whole theme of the show. And like, so what does that say about our culture? Let's loop back to Star Trek here. This adds to belief that strictly controlling your emotions is good, like I said, and feeling emotions is bad. So to oversimplify it a bit, this warring race collapsed. The Vulcan race just kind of collapsed. And what ends up happening is that the Vulcans become two separate species. They actually become the Romulans and the Vulcans. So their origins are the same races. And are you familiar with the Romulans from Star Trek?
Yeah.
Okay. The Romulans were the first antagonized in the original series. And they were brought back with greater frequency in the Next Generation. But they're seen as like being xenophobic, violent, totalitarian. They're seen as being extremely emotional. So it's like that two halves of what, like the two halves of us, the logical part and the emotional part, got separated into two separate races.
We'd rather be a Vulcan.
Do what?
Rather be a Vulcan.
Well, and that's the way like the show is kind of geared towards, is like, oh, you want to be a Vulcan, and like I said, Star Wars is like that too. You want to be a Jedi.
Okay.
Like it seems like there's kind of a push there to be like that. And so Romulans kind of had this whole idea, like they were very much dissent was a bad thing and very controlling in the way that they did things. When we see this and we look at the whole idea of controlling our emotions very, very tightly like that, we start to think of Sheldon Cooper. Like, I mean, he idealized Spock, like very much idealized Spock.
Right. So then you ask that question, was Sheldon Cooper right?
Well...
Are emotions a bad thing?
Well, yeah. Should we lock all of our feelings in a box or just logic our way out of them? Then, well, yeah. But how did that work out for Spock? Well, it didn't.
No, it didn't. Yeah.
And
I wouldn't want to be devoid of emotions, really, when I think about it. I mean, I enjoy feeling happiness. I enjoy feeling joy. I enjoy feeling peace. And I don't want to not feel. I mean, you can be angry, and anger can drive you to do good things. It can motivate you. So I wouldn't want to not feel those emotions.
Well, think about those emotions that activate the limbic system. They're like the gas pedal that motivate us to do forwards. And I've talked about this before, but when we talk about stress and anxiety, we have to have stress and anxiety to function. If we don't have stress, we don't get out of bed in the morning.
Right.
Like if I don't have, like I've got to have a reason to go and do things. I have to have tasks that need to be done, tests that I need to study for, things to motivate me, whether that be things I want to do or whether it be things I need to do.
Yeah.
They're positive stress.
Yeah, anxiety can be good.
Yes, absolutely. In manageable amounts.
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
the key.
That's the key. Balance.
So, like, going back to the whole idea of logic and emotion, we don't get to, you talked about balance. Well, how do we balance that? Because we don't get to flip them back and forth like a light switch.
Turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off.
Yeah,
that'd be nice, but
got to kind of integrate them together and use them simultaneously. In fact, there's actually been psychology cases, in which they have cut the ties between the two hemispheres of the brain, and each half works totally normally, but there's some dysfunction because they no longer work together. And that's why I was talking about the left hand and the right hand, left brain and the right brain, and that being a little bit of a myth, because they do work together and they work simultaneously towards solving a problem. So let's look at scientific innovation. For example, there was a podcast called Modern Wisdom in which the noted physicist Brian Greene, he noted that he doubted if the Vulcans would even have developed as they did and explored the universe had they not had the emotion, without emotions. All that happened before the Vulcan species had decided to learn to override their emotions, because emotions spawn creativity and innovation, and emotions allow us to think outside of the box, and even in some cases throw the box away and look for a different solution entirely.
Yeah. I have to concur because, you think about it, even in, some of the most amazing studies, research studies, things that are even going on this campus. You think about mice, you think about flies, rats, some of the amazing studies that they do, they have found that those particular animals still function with emotions.
Mhm.
There's sleep studies that are going on in this university, of the fly. I mean, there's mice studies, that you've done. You think about dogs, you've been Pavlov's study, and you think about all these animals and they still have emotions. They're not devoid of emotions.
No.
And so we as human beings have so many emotions,
Right.
And so can you imagine? I just cannot imagine being devoid of emotion.
Right. I mean, you'd be a robot pretty much at that point.
Yeah, exactly. So, I want, it makes you interesting to think about GTP chat, and you think about all the AI and how they're going to integrate emotion into GTP chat and
Well, yeah,
AI,
because you'd
so-
have to have emotion to have that creativity.
Mhm.
Like, and that's my thought is
Mhm.
that how can you even begin if you don't have that? And I'm not a scientist, so don't laugh at me.
Yeah, no, no, well, what was the robot's name on Star Trek?
Data?
Data. So you think about how he did struggle with showing emotion throughout.
He worked on it constantly,
he worked on it
through the show. Like he even got a cat at one
Mhm.
point because he was trying to learn and get
emotion.
tried all these new like emotion chips, and he tried all kinds of ways to try to connect with human emotion and express it better.
Right.
And that it's important because he knew that to be more well-rounded and to be human, he had to have that emotional part too. Like you can't just be all logic.
Think about all the movies that we've seen over time where they have created robots that they've inferred that they've had meaning and had emotion, and they've taken the data chips out of them and had to create, trying to say that they couldn't.
What is that one with Robin Williams? Oh, it's an old movie. I doubt any of our listeners will know what it is because it's a very, very, very old movie, and it wasn't really popular when it came out. But there was this old Robin Williams movie, and it came out in probably say 2000, 2001. Bicentennial Man. That's the name of it.
Gotcha.
And it's about Robin Williams plays a robot that is gradually trying to become human. And so he gradually starts altering himself and changing things. He starts completely as a robot at the very beginning, but he starts working on developing those emotions and that connection to become more human so that eventually he can become fully human. It's really interesting.
Yeah, well, think about R2D2, think about Iron Giant, all the, I mean, there's so many different.
Or that Haley Joel Osment movie. Oh, I think we're getting into old movies here. Haley Joel Osment, it's a Pinocchio reference. AI. The movie is called AI. And it's like the whole movie is got very Pinocchio vibes to it. They make all kinds of references to it. And so this robot child is on the search for the blue fairy in order to become a quote unquote real boy. Right. And so he's on this hunt. But he's emotional to start with. He's just looking for whatever quality differentiates him from being human.
Right, exactly. Well, Robots, the actual movie Robots, I mean, that came out when most of the freshmen were born in 2005.
Wow.
I can't believe it's so old, but that one was, around in my house for a really long time that we watched.
Yes, that's a really good movie.
It's a really good movie.
It was a really cute movie. But, maybe you guys watched it when you were kids.
Yeah, exactly. So, but, it's finding that emotion within, creating that thing that's an inanimate object, but we're not devoid of emotions.
Well, it's kind of balance. So too much emotion is a bad thing. Like we don't want to let our emotions control us. I mean, then you become a Sith Lord.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're Darth Vader running around, like,
right.
killing the Padawans. Like, you don't want to do that. You want to turn around and you want to have a balance between that emotion and that logic. It's kind of like using that ABC model. When I feel like my emotion is getting too high, I use my ABC model. But at the same time, not over regulating and what I call talking ourselves out of our emotions, which is basically what this podcast is about.
Right.
If I talk myself out of my feelings, I'm not feeling my feelings. And your emotions are really like a dashboard lights on a car. That's all it is. And so your emotions kind of give you a status update of what's happening. If my check engine light's on, it doesn't make my car bad. Just means that something's wrong with my car and I need to check it.
Right. So where does, when we're talking about emotions, I think you mentioned, not so too much emotion can cause us to become violent and irrational.
Right.
So we talked about balance. We can become unpredictable, and not being able to get along with people can be difficult. So like you said, going back to that ABC model. So where does Spock come in? Where does he, how do we integrate him in a little bit more to this conversation?
Well, Spock is kind of a mixture of human and Vulcan. He's both logical and emotional, and this made him a great officer and eventually an ambassador. And he was logically emotional.
Got it.
He was able to have empathy and cope with his feelings in a constructive way, which is really kind of the goal here.
Yeah.
I mean, not saying that you have to be like original series Spock, because he was still pretty stoic right back in original series. But we're talking more towards Spock at the end, where he was more well-rounded.
Right. So I think the key term we're looking for is called emotional regulation.
Yeah, emotional regulation.
Yeah, so I think that's that. Not too much low, not too much high, but finding that balance. And just getting that key term to not be swinging too high, swinging too low, but just striking that perfect balance of,
logic and emotion.
Logic and emotion, yeah.
Right. And so you can kind of start developing the other sides of your brain through like using the ABC model when we're feeling high levels of emotion. You can also add to your creative side if you feel like that's lacking, and visualize or draw concepts that you're studying. You can listen to some music, find a new way to creatively solve a problem, play logic-based games.
It's awesome, Amber. I think, when people tap into their own creativity, I think that's important. Learning to be learning autonomy is that important piece, and being tapping into who you are just helps you be more emotionally regulated.
Yes.
And a lot of times people just feel like they're not able to tap into that emotion and then find that logical ability to regulate. So this has been a good podcast.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you need help with your emotional regulation skills, you find out you're swinging too high, swinging too low, or you just can't find balance, we're here Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. So reach out to us. You can schedule online at Student Wellbeing. So we're here, minors.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us this week, and we'll see you next week.
For more information about mental health and wellness, contact Student Wellbeing at 204 Norwood Hall. And you can also give us a call at 573-341-4211.
The song Happy Days is brought to us by music from www.free-stock-music.com. You can also add and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook using our handle @S&T Wellbeing.